Moving away from the continent of Arachnia and Marth's assault on the Shadow Dragon, we enter into the near future on the continent of Valentia. And by entering Valentia, we enter Fire Emblem Gaiden. Gaiden, as far as I figured, is a side story of Shadow Dragon and Blade of Light, taking place in a whole separate continent with a wholly original cast. There really isn't any thread I see that connects the two games, aside from the Pegasus sisters in the original title being present in the Celica campaign. Speaking of campaigns, this game is nothing like I thought it would be. To my shock, Sacred Stones wasn't the first Fire Emblem to have a world map and skirmish systems for its gameplay. It was Gaiden. This game breaks away from the original formula so hard I'm struggling to compare them meaningfully. Let's start with the obvious. Already, you have a lot more story to chew on compared to the previous title. I am really inattentive, so something isn't interesting to me, I just don't pay attention to it. Marth's succession in the first game was a very serviceable story, one that perfectly fits his campaign and justifies the linear path. It was not eye-catching for me, so I wasn't invested particularly at all. And Celica's story was a lot more interesting to watch unfold. For a short breakdown, the gods Duma and Mila took two sides of the continent of Valentia. Mila disappeared and Duma is currently being resurrected by his devout cultists. Meanwhile, Desai starts a coup d'etat and Rudolf has taken this opportunity to take over most of the continent in an expansionist war. Alm, grandson of Mycen, sets out alongside his friends to repel the invading army. Meanwhile, Celica sets out for the Temple of Mila in hopes of clues on something. Look, I forgot. It wasn't all that interesting. Over time, you suss out the source of the rising hordes of zombies, mummies, and dragons. The devout cultists I mentioned earlier. Meanwhile, Alm has to face off and kill Rudolf, who in a twist is his own father. Rudolf starts his war campaign in the hopes that a new crop of heroes would rise to defeat him and save the kingdom from the gods who've both gone insane with their power and forced their kingdom into stagnation. Alm and Celica reunite, kill the cultists, and lay Duma to sleep once again. Then they fix the kingdom. The game literally ends by telling you no one really knows why the war even started. Oddly enough, I love it. Enough convention breaks to keep me interested. I love how from Alm's perspective until the endgame, it's a fairly standard conflict against knights, archers, and wizards with the occasional gargoyle, zombies in caves, and shrines. Meanwhile, Celica is fighting in graveyards against hordes of undeads, gargoyles galore, skeleton knights, and dragons. I also really like Zeke. No reason, Zeke just looks cool. Running theme going forward is that the gameplay stays relatively the same with minor differences depending on the gimmick or systems. Gaiden ditches weapon or item durability for permanent use, accessories, weapons, and shields. Aesthetically, it's a big improvement as well. All the animations are pretty and the battle sprites are much more expressive. Some highlights like the Angel Ring and the Magic Ring completely morph the game around. The Angel Ring doubles whatever you get upon level up. Any character with even mediocre stat growths gets turned into a top tier fighter with this ring. It also gives a passive, massive 40 luck just for equipping. As for the Magic Ring, it's much more balanced. Plus 5 magic power, and adds 2 extra blocks of range. This lets mages comfortably grab kills from the backline and lets you cast monstrous spells with less combat risk. Something I personally love, archers. Archers are so much better, once again. Archers have an extra block of range than in most titles. However, amended with a bow, their range goes up to full 4 blocks of range. While most in-game archers struggle to manage their power, skill, and speed, they never are in risk and always have a reliable source of damage. When the shot lands, anyway. God damn it, Leo. In general, since there isn't durability to worry about, you get to play fast and loose with all your spells and teammates. The only addendum being that spells now cost HP as a balance for their power. Is this balanced? No. It wasn't balanceable the moment they added caves for level grinding. But in combat, missing a crucial spell and being left with less health can often be the thing that seals your fate. It didn't happen to me nearly as much as it did for the opposing forces. A theme that you will find that stays consistent with the whole game. We may as well call this segment Shrines, since that's the main influence the map will have on your journey. Having places to grind in between missions is going to have unrepairable changes in the game formula, one I will explain during the character section. However, it is also a blessing. The ability to grind lets you take more initiative in fights that matter, and lets characters lagging behind catch up with the rest of the army. You also promote characters in these caves using the statues of Mila, which is the extent to which she will impact the whole game. You also have these heads. They're called lion heads. Sure. And they provide stat boosts. Character lacking in speed or defense, lion head adds 2 extra to that point. They do have limited uses. Each cave lion head will only be usable up to 3 times. There's a shrine around the end of Alm's campaign, Hidden Shrine, filled with zombies and mummies. Mummies boast the highest XP yield for the endgame. This lets literally any character go from level 1 to 20 in the span of a couple fights. I'll let you decide if that's a good thing or a bad one. Remember how there wasn't much to chew on in Shadow Dragon and Blade of Light for its main and side characters? Gaiden fixes this by having slightly less characters to forget. They still don't have any particular characteristics, which is then further exacerbated by how interchangeable they've become. Having the ability to round out everyone's weaknesses also means mitigating other units' strengths. In the end, out of the 33 playable characters, roughly 7 to 10 of them have anything discernible to say about. Here they are. Gray grows into a Baron alongside Forsyth and Lucas. What makes him stand out? Nothing. However, I equipped him with a speed ring, and he was monstrous on the front line for the mid to late game. Kamui and Saber both embody the role of the early to mid game shield, protecting weaker units and dispatching stronger ones. They both, however, faded as the game went on, and were the only 2 to actually die in the whole game. Silk and Jenny, only proper healers in the game, absolutely crush dragons and most monsters with their spells. Having access to warp makes Silk invaluable, and her decent defense means her life was rarely at risk. Jenny might not help as much in battle, however Physic meant her healing was much more fruitful. Both have access to illusion, an absolutely broken technique that summons a small task force of mist units. These units change depending on the map and character. For me it was mostly just Slayers, which meant at any point, for the low cost of 14 HP, Jenny and Silk could summon a whole platoon to eat aggro and overwhelm the enemy army. If that wasn't enough utility, all clerics have access to Deer, a spell that erases all summoned monsters, and sometimes just existing monsters from the entire map. It is horrifically overpowered, and I'm glad it never returns because this is too much power in the hands of a healer. Regardless, it cements Silk and Jenny as, in my opinion, the unquestionable strongest characters, barring maybe 2 other units. Python and Leon. If you're noticing that both characters tend to be just the alternate campaign version of themselves, you'd be correct, since these 2 are both archers. Archers have way more range, so Leon and Python don't struggle to soften targets or finish retreating ones. Of the 2, Python really shined late game with the Holy Bow, softening Biggles and mages from afar. Celica, secondary main character. Celica is a spell sword. She has powerful spells, access to the spell Angel, making it easy for her to bolster the front lines, and can dish out serious damage with her more offense magic, such as Ragnarok. When cornered, she can do fairly as a sword user, however she has far too little health and defense to work that efficiently as a direct fighter. She also isn't very fast after the mid-game. Celica's story is she went searching for the whereabouts of Mila after her disappearance. She has a minor spat with Alm regarding the future of the kingdom, but that gets easily resolved by the end. May and Delthea, literally the same as Celica on the battlefield, just worse initially and better eventually. Delthea especially, since she is on Alm's route. Matilda. Through some endgame grinding, Matilda is the best frontline fighter. Paired with the Holy Lance or Gradivus, she becomes an unstoppable force. Tatiana. You get her really late. How does she compete with the other broken clerics? She knows Warp and Fortify. Your army is now invincible. Est. Est. Out of all the Pegasus trio, this time around, Est no longer is shackled by her late arrival status. Pala and Katri are really good early to mid game flyers, but in the end, Est completely cleans house of all monsters and soldiers. Her massive speed, power, and skill means a highly accurate and potential frontline piercer. Est is alongside Matilda for strongest frontline fighter. And now, the main character. Once again, Alm. Much like Marth, Alm is a really good unit. Unlike Marth, he has really good power and defense. Alm may lag in power early on, but once again, by the end he was soloing entire hordes of troops. Alm's big twist is that he is the son of Rudolf, Albin Alm Rudolf II, having no choice but to strike his father down. I mean, he technically doesn't have to do it directly, he can just send some other person to do it, but where's the drama in that? Arm's purpose, as springboarded by Rudolph's war, was... Okay, so Rudolph started the war in the hopes that it would spark the coming of a new age of heroes. He essentially hoped that Arm and others like him would see his expansionist conflict and rise up against it. Arm was separated from his father in the hopes he would grow up to kill him. I'm conflicted between how odd a decision that is for fixing a mad god problem and how fresh that is from the usual Fire Emblem fare. Gaiden is definitely a contender for longest lasting father figure in Fire Emblem title. What else do I say about Arm? He's strong. Once you get him to max level at least. Well, I already said that. He also uses the falchion. That's it. Moving on. Other things that came to mind last section. Speed Ring, as brought up earlier, gives flat 40 speed and maxed out movement. I'm shocked these items were even allowed to exist. Biggles, hate them with a passion, too bulky and fast. Their attacks do enough damage to annoy and they are accurate enough to overwhelm your toughest units. Any map with Biggles has them swarming infinitely. I'm glad these things got downgraded hard in Sacred Stones. Slayer, awesome class, just a super fast mercenary. You trade what I assume is a bit of defense for maximum speed and movement. Did I bring up Judah even once? He's the main villain. He wants to resurrect Duma, and that's what he does. The only marginally difficult thing about him is he can only be hurt on turns 4, 8, and 12, and the like. You could weather him down over time, or just let him weather himself since his spell costs a good amount of health to cast. He's really easy. If Celica stands next to Arm will have a guaranteed crit. That makes the final boss a complete cakewalk. On that note, Triangle Attack, with a newly souped up Est, much easier to pull off and easily rips through bosses. It really is the theme of the game, isn't it? If the grinding doesn't break it, the spells, accessories, and abilities will. I have never seen so many overpowered features in the same Fire Emblem game, and yet, this was so much fun to play. Being able to be a complete aggressor in most skirmishes is a really freeing position. Having my mages summon hordes of mist troops and erasing enemies while my strongest units run completely unopposed on the map, it's awesome. It's also old, but I'm past caring about that stuff. Should you play Fire Emblem Gaiden? Absolutely. Maybe this game won't give you what you want from a traditional Fire Emblem game, but what it does give you is still pretty special. So starting forward, behold, the Excel spreadsheet. Here we go. Gaiden is now the second best game I've ever played, soon to be amended, I hope, by the rest of the series. That'll be all. Thanks for watching. There is no outro. Goodbye.